Republicans across the country are scrambling to reassure voters they will protect vitro fertilization after the Alabama Supreme Court handed down a decision last week, jeopardizing the procedure in that state and perhaps beyond. After the ruling declared frozen embryos qualify as children, former President Trump is urging state lawmakers to find a solution to preserve IVF. Democrats and Biden administration officials argue Trump created the problem in the first place. Joining me now is Alexis McGill Johnson, President and CEO of Planned Parenthood. Thank you for joining me today, Alexis. Let me go right at it. Vice President Kamala Harris made her first ever appearance on the Biden campaign TikTok page Thursday to talk about the Alabama ruling. Take a listen.
Well, okay, how did this happen? And I would say, ask who's to blame. And I'll answer that question. When you look at the fact that the previous president of the United States was clear in his intention to hand-pick 3 Supreme Court justices who would overturn the protections of Roe v. Wade, and he did it. And that's what got us to this point today.
Can you elaborate on how the Trump administration's packing of the Supreme Court with extreme right-wing conservatives has led to this situation where IVF is under threat in the state of Alabama?
Well, absolutely, Rev. I mean, look, the Dobbs decision didn't just limit access to abortion. It made pregnancy outcomes more dangerous, and now we are seeing these threats to IVF. And we said this was coming, right? We shouldn't be surprised, because together what these decisions do is not only take away, right, deny the freedoms of us to decide whether and when to become parents, but they also are now saying how we become parents, right? We've allowed, you follow their logic, right? They have inserted themselves in the private medical decisions related to reproductive health care like abortion. Why wouldn't they be able to do the same with IVF? Reproductive health care is all of it, right? So where does the boundary stop? Contraception, emergency contraception, pregnancy, miscarriage, fertility, IVF, and abortion. They have always forecast that they are coming for all of these things, and we shouldn't be surprised that this judge, who relied a lot on his own Christian nationalist beliefs, really spoke very clearly about what the true intent here is with IVF.
Now, Trump's own favored pollster, Kellyanne Conway, cites polls showing 85% of Americans support IVF, including 78% of abortion opponents and 83% of evangelicals. Republicans in Alabama are trying to come up with a legislative fix to this ruling as we speak. But the question is, can we trust them to protect reproductive rights? The Republican track record since Dobbs seems to suggest they will continue to push for more restrictions.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, look, this is a political response because they are losing politically, right? At every turn when Americans have had the opportunity to vote on reproductive freedom, we have won, right? Because people, turns out, do not like their rights and fundamental freedoms being taken away. And so they are trying to find legislative efforts and political efforts to really cover up what the true substance of their values is and the implication of that on policy. I think they thought they would be able to control their base, honestly. I think they thought they would be able to control their constituencies by delivering them these justices and these judges who are completely hostile to reproductive freedom. And what we are seeing now is that the base is controlling them, and they are falling even further out of lockstep. I want to remind you also, Rev, that this isn't just the 3 Supreme Court justices that Trump appointed to the Supreme Court, right? This is also the federal judiciary that is also filled with many judges, including Judge Sarah Pitlick in Missouri, who is a federal district court judge, who said expressly during her, in her own writings that she did not believe in IVF or surrogacy because she thought it was demeaning to motherhood. So it's bait, right? It's like these opinions have infiltrated our judiciary and our legislatures, and they're scrambling because they know that politically they cannot win.
Now we mentioned in our previous segment, the Gotcha segment I do, that Trump's allies are hoping to push a Christian nationalist agenda in a second term, should they get one, going after not only abortion, but contraception, same-sex marriage, and even divorce laws. How concerned should voters be about this?
I think we should be very concerned, Rev. I mean, you and I are both Christian. I think we should be concerned as Christians because we understand the fundamental difference between being a Christian and being a Christian nationalist, right? One that we can love our faith, we can love the Lord, and we can also recognize that our faith should not be used to impose our beliefs on everyone by governmental overreach, right? By infiltrating into our private medical decisions. And so their willingness to rely, again, if you just read the judge's opinion in Alabama, we should be alarmed by the fact that they are saying we don't want to follow the policies of the Constitution. We want to follow a belief structure that is higher than that. They are really going counter to the fact that the Constitution of these United States was designed explicitly to separate church and state. And so I think, as you mentioned, reproductive freedom, no-fault divorce, all of these things that are going to be really not about the values even, really they are about further, building out power and control. That should really be terrifying for any of us who, has come through that previous administration.
And to be clear, when they say they want to go by the Bible, they want to go by their interpretation of the Bible. So all Christians should not relax on that because their interpretation of the Bible is much different than mine. And I preached this morning at Bethany Baptist Church, and you are a Christian. But let me go to this. The Chief Justice in the IVF Alabama Supreme Court decision wrote a concurring opinion defending his position, heavily citing from Christian scripture and theology, as I was referring to. He has also openly criticized other judges for not considering religion in their rulings and has expressed support for the theory known as the Seven Mountain Mandate, which calls for conservative Christians to run the government and broadly influence American life. Republicans have actively been planning similarly minded justices throughout the country, potentially affecting cases around reproductive freedoms for decades in the future. What can be done to counter this, Alexis?
Well, I think we're already seeing it, right? We're seeing it. We know it doesn't end in Alabama. Just in 2024 alone, we've seen 38 bills using so-called personhood language that have been proposed in 13 states, right? Bills in Florida and Iowa and Oklahoma, ones that could allow similar wrongful death claims, similar to the law used in the Alabama decision. And so, the counter to that, right, is the counter to what we will be talking about all year long, right, which is about how we need to vote these people out, right, that we cannot accept living in a world where our fundamental freedoms are continued to be chipped away by, religious zealots who care nothing about the families and the communities that they are setting laws for. They care nothing for, I think about those parents in Alabama right now, right, who've spent tens of thousands of dollars, right? They've gone through, physiological challenges, emotional challenges, financial challenges, just for the right to become and, extend their family. And that can just be taken away by a Christian nationalist judge. So we have to kind of get those stories out and tell people what's at stake so they understand going into 24, all of this is on the line.
And make it clear we're not anti-Christian or we are anti any religion dominating what is legally fair to everyone. And clearly those that interpret Scripture their way. I can hear them now saying to us, servant, obey your master. That's in the Bible, too. If you interpret it their way, that can be very dangerous. Alexis.